like day to day grotesque and like upping the ante on like savage culture war stuff that younger people, because they have been groomed by Disney, do not agree with, to the point that they'll feel obligated to vote just to like keep them out, or will they just check out? And if they check out, it's going to have a similar effect because they're fucking
It's
pissed off. Brandon going parents sure as hell aren't going to check out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want to say that I still think like Democrats lose both houses.
Yeah,
Like,
with those narrow
yeah,
margins, they can't hold on to those. No way.
no, yeah, just how voting is in this country, and like even if they do win, the popular vote for midterms in total vote count, that does not mean
That
much.
doesn't mean anything.
But it is hard for me to see, like, I mean, who knows predicting like fucking 9 months from now with anything in the current culture. But it just, when I see like 20 pundits all say the same thing, I immediately start thinking it will not happen.
Mhm.
I realize that is reactive and a simplistic way to look at things, but it is nonetheless how I predicted a few things.
It's
I mean,
true.
I mean, like, it'd probably be like, like a drop off in 18 to 30-year-olds like actively voting in the midterms, but like that's usually the case in midterm elections. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, he does mention the word Bernie Sanders in this article. We'll get to it, but like, the enthusiasm, if it's like tamped down to any degree, it's because like the Democrats in two presidential elections kneecapped the candidate that was actually supported by young people. But as we learned in 2020, like most of them ended up voting for Biden anyway. I mean, the
Yeah.
same problem is just like the people who don't vote and never will. I will say though, the Democrats are in a tough position right now because the Republicans, they're exciting young people. When you've got stars like David Mamet calling people who give you homework pedophiles.
This has always been the problem with education, is that teachers are inclined, particularly men, because men are predators, to pedophilia.
I mean, you've got someone who like really speaks to young people, like playwright and film director David Mamet. Like when he goes on Mark Levin, like the 18 to 30-year-olds are going to be like, who's this Mark Levin guy? Wait, he has a book out about socialism? Let me read it.
Well, David Mamet today, the thing I saw, he's redoing Scum Manifesto because he's gone from saying like all teachers are liberals and therefore pedophiles to like, well, all men are pedophiles and rapists, and if they're teachers, what do you think they're gonna do? It's like they're gonna those guys who are just like their head is 90% U.S. battleship hat and aviator sunglasses are gonna write Dworkin books by accident on Free Republic. Well, no one's on Free Republic anymore, on Gab, just about how all men have an innate desire to abuse and dominate women, and therefore there should be no teachers. Yeah, no, does our 54-year-old wonderkind say anything about like the PRO Act or unions in here? Because that is kind of the one way I could see Biden not just eating shit by less than expected, but like maybe pulling out one of Irish Joe's famous tricks.
Well, let's continue on. So the 54-year-old pollster with salt and pepper hair who is not on TikTok. He's hailed by industry colleagues and political operatives on both sides of the aisle for an encyclopedic knowledge of young voters, said Kristen Soltis Anderson, a Republican pollster. John Anzalone, Biden's lead campaign pollster, said Della Volpe's data yields so much depth of understanding of a misunderstood group. Della Volpe has led Harvard University's Institute of Politics Youth Poll since its inception in 2000, with former students including House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik and Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Della Volpe's longitudinal insight into young voters, what moves them, how they feel about politicians, and whether they're going to unplug from politics altogether matters deeply for Democrats, especially ahead of 2022. They're also not as broadly studied or understood as, say, independents, even though they represent a core part of the party's base and their numbers are fluctuating. The party goes into midterms in an unusual place with young people, Della Volpe said in an interview. There are more younger people in play than there were in the last two cycles. The interesting thing there is he says, like, young people are an understudied group in politics as opposed to, I mean, like, they're probably the most studied group when it comes to, like, marketing. But like they said, like unlike independents, which are like studied meticulously by pollsters, it's like I don't think that's the case because like just like this salt and pepper haired pollster has come along to fucking teach them about young people. It's just that like the American independent voter and the issues that matter to them are the issues that politicians already hope to achieve and care about. So, like, if you're like, it's easy to study a group that's telling you exactly that what you're doing is right and that you should continue doing it. Or, I mean, like, independents will say, like, I hate politicians, but, like, the gas prices are too high, and also people aren't paying enough for it. That kind of shit. Going on, where Democrats spent past elections mostly worried about whether young people would vote, this cycle is different, Della Volpe continued. In the face of economic unrest, disinformation, and without former President Donald Trump as a foil, he said, Democrats need to persuade them and mobilize them. That is the new reality. The pollster who was part of Biden's team during the 2020 general election still has the ear of many in the administration. He's one of those trusted voices people in the White House turn to for advice, said one senior Biden advisor. Della Volpe has recently
Shouldn't
made
that be all you need to hear to know to not listen to him?
Della Volpe has recently made several presentations to the White House staff, according to people familiar with the meetings. Biden's yo-yoing numbers with young people should concern everyone, said John Walsh, Senator Ed Markey's chief of staff, who managed the Massachusetts Democrats' successful primary campaign in 2020, which drew unusually high support among young voters for a 75-year-old senator. Government is not acting with the urgency this moment demands, and they're frustrated, pissed off. I worry that some people are not listening to John, Walsh added. I mean, I'm just like, maybe we'll get to it, but I'm waiting for something in the piece.
Yeah, what's
of like,
the deal?
what
What
is prescriptive here? What is prescriptive? What are they going to do? What are they going to get to get young people out to vote?
Well,
Hopefully
this is like this is the Democrat special with like anybody or anything. It's just like pledging to listen and hear and to understand voices, I guess. Talk about guided by voices. Get Jay Carney on the horn.
Felix, this is the next line in this article.
Oh, boy.
Della Volpe has spent much of the last 2 decades listening to young people.
Hell yeah.
Wow. Well, so is Bill Clinton.
In 2000, Della Volpe conducted his first youth survey with 2 Harvard University students who wanted to understand why college students participated in community service but didn't vote. At the time, Della Volpe had built a polling and market research business around dial testing, cutting-edge technology of the day in which participants would rate their reaction to political speeches or campaign ads on a manual dial. His roster of clients included President Bill Clinton, Senator Ted Kennedy, and major corporations. But specifically, polling youth filled the void. No one was listening to younger people, Della Volpe said. Even now, young people are more difficult and expensive to survey. They're more transient, less comfortable picking up an unknown phone number, and more likely to require different language options. They didn't vote, so candidates didn't appeal to them or target them. And then they didn't vote, so it was a vicious cycle repeating, Della Volpe said. So, okay, like, I just keep hearing...
I wonder why they don't pick up unusual phone numbers, the thing that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
He's been listening to the youth. And most people, he's filling a void. No one's listening to the youth. What are the youth saying, John or Della Volpe? Please tell me what young people are saying. You've been listening to them for 2 decades.
What are they saying?
What are they saying? What are they saying?
What do the young people say?
Okay.
It sounds like the last young people, by the way, that Della Volpe actually spoke with himself are now in their 50s.
Since 2000, the Harvard Youth Poll has grown in scope, publishing twice a year with undergraduates developing questions and Della Volpe editing and sharpening them. In 2018, citing his own data, Della Volpe predicted that young people would show up in historic numbers, calling Trump's first midterm a moment of a once-in-a-generation attitudinal shift around voting. Some pollsters rolled their eyes, but Della Volpe was right. 36% of 18 to 29-year-olds voted that cycle, almost doubling 2014 rates and beating any previous midterm participation since the 80s. The Harvard Youth Poll has been the only consistent data set to look at change over time on this stuff, said Ben Wessel, who served from 2019 to 2021 as executive director of Next Gen America, the largest Democratic group focused on youth mobilization. Because of this longevity, he catches trends between politics and not politics that the rest of the political world could really learn from. What are they? Tell me. What are these guys? What are the gems that he has to impart here?
You got to pay for them.
I'm halfway through this
behind the
fucking
paywall.
article.
This article is like going to a Turkish ice cream stand. My God.
Give me the goddamn
Get to
cone.
the fucking point. Let me hold the fucking cone. Jesus.
Della Volpe also regularly runs focus groups, which make him extremely effective at going beyond percentages and crosstabs. A much more nuanced way of getting to the true viewpoint, says Matt Barretto, a Democratic pollster who worked with Della Volpe on the Biden campaign. What's the true viewpoint? I've heard this guy Della Volpe's name 15. Okay. All right. Sorry. Gotta refocus here.
Della Volpe was an Eagle Scout where in his first encounter with young people. At only age 54, he's been known to wear shorts to a barbecue, upsetting the pin-straight acolytes of the Democratic Party. Della Volpe doesn't just know young people, he hears them.
Indeed, Della Volpe's interest is less focused on quantitative feedback than on stories, describing it as almost a kind of political therapy. He zeroed in on how Gen Z is defined by anxiety through key events, including Trump's election in 2016 and the Parkland school shooting in 2018. It has made them suspicious of institutions and impatient for change, he wrote in his book, Fight, How Gen Z is Channeling Their Fear and Passion to Save America. In recent focus groups conducted over Zoom with 24 Gen Zers, Della Volpe started by asking them to share something good that had happened to them recently. He followed up by asking if they felt like their personal lives were on the right track, and if they weren't, why? He asked them about their mental health, the pressures and stresses they face. In both 90-minute sessions, it took nearly an hour before he explicitly asked about politics or politicians. Focus on values first, second, and third, Della Volpe said. It's perhaps a unique perspective in politics. No, it's not. That's what.
That's what they all say because it's free.
They all say. Yeah.
Values is free. You don't have to promise anything. You don't have to say we're going to fund something or change something. You could just say we have these values. It's the cheapest. They love hearing this shit. What you're saying that I could fucking just put out some goddamn to TikToks with noted celebs saying how much we value young people and how the Republicans are actually not based, that they're actually cringe or whatever the fuck. They love hearing that.
So yeah, this 54-year-old boy genius, he's gonna get like Tony Coelho to do a TikTok where he's like, yo, having anxiety is chuggy. Let's vote blue. All the unindicted characters from The Ambition and the Power are gonna show up. Actually, not on a TikTok, on like Vimeo.